Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So with Charlie Kirk's murderer seemingly caught, the far right in both the UK and especially the US is attempting to weaponise it to create a war against what they call the far left. Yet, the evidence would seem to suggest that the alleged murderer, Tyler Robinson, was actually a member of a far right group who saw Kirk as a traitor to the cause. Now, what could such a revelation do to the far right if it became more widely known? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So the narrative is hugely important in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, especially in America, where the situation is incredibly dangerous. Trump and other notable figures on the far right are treating this as if the murderer is radical left. Trump has said that extremists on the right are just angry at crime, but those on the left are the really nasty ones, right? But is Tyler Robinson far left? Some social media posts seem to suggest he's part of a group known as gropers. Gropers are a member of what's often termed the alt-right in America. They're white nationalists who claim to be Christian. Basically violent incels is what they seem to me. Although their lives, of course, don't even remotely align with Christian commandments. They're led by Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes. There's a drama story which we won't worry about for now with him. It's actually quite spicy, but unless this group suddenly becomes more newsworthy in Europe, probably not of major interest to most of you. Now, if you're thinking that these gropers sound like they'd be on the same side as Charlie Kirk, you'd be wrong. Although their views align very closely, the gropers hated Kirk because he was debating with people who were seen as on the other side. In other words, he's been fraternising with the enemy. These people are not about debating across the divide. They're not about unity. They're not about reaching out. They're about tribal annihilation. So what's the evidence that Tyler Robinson may be a groper? Well, this clip was rescued from social media posts of him, which his mother had been deleting since his arrest. Looks weird, but ultimately harmless to most of us, right? But it's based on a pose and a style of dress used to identify gropers, based on the Pepe the Frog meme, which is just a ubiquitous internet meme, by the way, not specifically used by the far right, but this specific image is, and it's used to identify these gropers. So Tyler Robinson posing like this is clearly mimicking that pose. Now, it doesn't prove he's a groper, right? He could have just been posing ironically in order to ridicule them, perhaps, right? That happens. But if we assume that he wasn't being ironic, that he had himself photographed for the pose because this was the cult he was falling in with at the time, then the situation suddenly gets interesting, doesn't it? There's photographic evidence that he may be a groper. Gropers do hate Kirk because they think he's a traitor for debating with their enemies. The two things would instantly give Tyler Robinson a motive for wanting to murder Kirk, which, if true, means that Kirk was not murdered by the radical left, but by the radical right. And let's be honest, I mean, I've never shied away from saying there's plenty of hate on the extreme left, just like the extreme right. But most political murders are carried out by the extreme right. Not all. I mean, we had the murder of a pharmaceutical CEO recently, but the vast majority are carried out by the far right. And if this turns out to be another case of the far right murdering someone for political reasons, what will that do to the movement? How would MAGA cope if it had to accept that one of their own was murdered by another of their own? Would disowning the subcult save them, or start the process of dividing their movement? Or, even if this is true, does it ever really come out? Trump's in charge. He desperately needs the murderer to be seen as radical left, not radical right. Will we even get to the truth of why he murdered Kirk? The far right have control of the government, the FBI, much of the media in America. Will the narrative be decided by them rather than the truth? Will evidence of his far-right views on social media, once expunged from their original sources, be then dismissed as fabricated? After all, anyone can create a copy of a social media post, can't they? And would that be then replaced in the official narrative with genuinely fabricated posts? Will we ever be able to trust any narrative? And if not, that will suit Trump. I mean, believe his version or believe nothing. Both work for him. He just needs you to desperately not believe the truth. Trump has already made it clear that he wants to wage a war against his political enemies. In his statement vowing vengeance for Kirk, he's specifically singled out trans people and the radical left. And they've been putting his widow to work pretty quickly. Sorry, dear, no time to mourn your murdered husband. Get yourself in front of the cameras and read this statement out. we've got an ideological civil war to ignite. Don't worry, you'll be paid well for it. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.